So thanks everyone for joining us. We're just going to do a quick run through with Sarah. I'm just going to turn it over to her, and then she can kind of explain the format, and then if there are any questions, kind of how she wants to handle those. She's an awesome resource. I'm not sure how long she's used the app, but just a great person to talk strategy with, and like different methods of how to increase engagement with the app, and then also, obviously we can handle some small troubleshooting things as well. So, Sarah, thanks for hanging out at the office and giving us this training, but I'll kick it over to you, and yeah, let's do this.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Patrick. So I just wanted to get everyone on a call here because as you're moving forward with using Double Dutch for your decon apps, and I know decons are just around the corner, they're going to be here before we know it, that sometimes it helps to see real life strategy and real life examples as you're going through and building these things. Hopefully all of you had a chance to experience the CKIX app last summer in Chicago. This is very, very similar to all of that. There are some new features, and I'll go over some of those as well, but a lot of the purpose and the engagement and the abilities to create activity feeds and stuff like that, all of that is included in the app that you guys get to use for your decon events. So I'm so excited to work with you guys on that. Just a little bit of background on me. I've worked here at Kiwanis International for almost 7.5 years, and I've been the digital media specialist for just about 4. So that means in addition to working on apps like this, I also am in charge of our Kiwanis International social media team and work with our email marketing. So if you ever want to get in touch with me, I am attached to my email and attached to a screen pretty much 24 hours a day if I'm not sleeping. So I'll make sure that you guys have my contact information. Like Patrick said, if you run into any issues as you're moving forward, trying to figure out best strategies and content to use for your app, I am definitely available to help you with that. And so again, I'll make sure that you have my contact information. So first, I just want to set some expectations for this call that we're on. Hopefully all of you had a chance to go to the pages that Patrick linked in one of his previous emails for Double Dutch University. Those will give you more of a background in the technical end. Those are things that regardless of what program or event you're doing, all of those things are generally going to be the same. There were 2 courses in there, and they're very quick, pretty painless to go through. One is just kind of a refresher if you want to remember how the app works, what it looks like from the user experience end. That one I think is a good one to start out with. Even if you did use the app last year, just something to kind of refresh your memory about the different features that are available. Kind of get those gears shifting, like, oh, what can we use for ours? As well as one that's more about how to upload your content, adding your schedule information, adding bios of your speakers, that sort of thing, really showing you a step-by-step guide on how to do that in the back system, which is called the CMS. And all of you should have received an email with access to that. That would have been back before the holidays, would have been mid to late December, I believe is when I sent those out. If for any reason you do not have those, feel free to let Patrick and me know, and I will make sure that you have access to the back end. The back end is where you can upload all of your content. It's where you can monitor and moderate if need be. And it's also where you can find a lot of data, both real time while you're going through your decon, as well as afterwards to see what things your attendees liked, didn't like. It can give you a lot of feedback for shaping future decons. So that, I think, the data is one of the most important pieces of this. And it's really cool that we get that, because in some cases we're just going off of anecdotes. So really what I'm talking about today is going through some of the examples that we did at CKIX last year. And Patrick is also on this call because he worked a lot with this app for the Chicago event last summer. And so there may be some questions that I won't be able to answer that he can, so we'll tag team it here tonight. And if you guys have any questions as we're going through it, feel free to let me know. We'll make sure we don't have a whole lot of feedback if multiple people are talking at once. So let's see here. Let me make sure it'll share screen all right here. Just a second. All right, so hopefully everyone can see this. I am currently in the back end of the Double Dutch CMS. So if you've already gone in and started playing with the different features for your particular decon event, then this probably looks pretty familiar to you. This is the back end for last summer's, just so you can see it pre-populated with some content. And so as we're going through here, I'm going to share some things that we've learned through the last couple of years of using this app and this particular app company. We've used them for about 3 years now, 3 or 4 years. And CKI and Key Club were the first ones to use it. And Kiwanis just started using it the last couple of years. So we've kind of had our trial and error, learned some strategies that work really well for us. And that's what I want to share with you, because obviously the app is not the only thing that you're doing for your district convention. Everybody's busy. It's all hands on deck all the time. Believe me, we know. So I want to make it as easy as possible and share some of the tips to save you time and make this as awesome as possible. So I'm here in this first tab, if you guys can see where I'm circling, in the layout tab. You know, again, this is where you see your full menu. You see all of the different pieces that you can include. And this is really up to you how much separate information you want to include here. My tip is to always start with a schedule, simply because that usually is the biggest amount of work. Just kind of figuring out what your schedule is, the different times, hooking them up to speakers, that sort of thing. But having at least your schedule in there then allows you the opportunity to then expand upon it, do some more of the fun stuff. And we'll talk about some of those things here in a second. Let's see here. No matter how much information you have for your app, you know, if you just have schedule, speaker bios, maybe a little bit of information for delegates, you know, kind of like what we have here. Or if you have a lot, if you're sharing things like, for example, last year we had our deep dish pizza spots and sharing how many miles away they were. No matter how much content you have in here, I highly recommend to save yourself time and to make sure that everything looks correct. If you haven't imported all of that information into the app yet, see if you can have a team of, you know, 1 or 2 at least other proofreaders to take a look at before it goes in. It sometimes is a lot harder to see typos once they're in individual pages. So I would highly recommend that, and it's just so that, you know, none of us want to get called out on it by someone who's on the app saying, hey, you spelled this wrong, or this time is wrong. It's easy to miss some of those, but having someone else just to take a look at it, make sure everything's spelled correctly, and then that way, when you go to import it, all you're doing is copying and pasting. Makes it pretty simple. And the nice thing is, too, about all of this information, rarely is any of this something that is a surprise or something that happens in real time at the convention. So the reason why I bring that up is, like I said, we want to save you guys time and we want you to be as efficient as possible. And if you've seen us CKI and Kiwanis staff at conventions running around with our heads cut off during convention time, I'm sure you understand that, we're not necessarily sitting back and plugging in stuff in the app necessarily during that convention time, because it's all hands on deck. Everyone has so many different tasks and we need to be there in the moment. About 95% of everything we used in our app last year, those are all things that were pre-populated before people even started using the app. There's no reason to, not have information for delegates or information about workshops and things like that. Obviously, if stuff changes and you need to make tweaks to it, that's totally fine. But that way you can have as much content already done leading up to those, the week or two before your decon, and you're not stressing out trying to get some things into the app. So that would be my recommendation, just kind of front loading it with as much of this static information that you already know very well. Like, your code of conduct, the rules that the students need to go by, ideally probably where some of the events are going to be, or the map of the hotel. So you can plug those things in earlier. I do want to show too, you have the opportunity to change the orders of any of these things in your layout. And at the very bottom, if you can see where I'm scrolling around, you have your priority icons. You can change these to be whatever you want. My caution is that I would say keep at least activity, notifications, and agenda all right here at the bottom. If you want to change out attendees to something else that you think your attendees will be visiting more often and won't want to click on more and scroll down and try and find, that one is kind of your free space. You can choose what you want there. But if people are referring to their agenda and they have to go multiple steps in order to get there, that is a barrier to them using the app and enjoying it. It can get really frustrating. Same thing with the notifications. So that's what I would personally recommend. I bring that up because I went to a conference last year with a technology conference, ironically enough, where the event app was very similar to this, and they did not have the agenda in an easy, accessible spot. And it just ended up being frustrating for everyone involved. So feel free to kind of play with that, but those would be my definite recommendations for your attendees. All right. So I skipped the content tab because that is going to be the same regardless of convention or strategy. And so there are tutorials on Double Dutch University about how to upload content. Again, if you have any questions about that, feel free to contact me. But for purposes of this, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. I do want to go into setup and talk a little bit about this fourth item in the list here, push and promoted messages. So just to clarify what these are, I think when most people hear push messages, you're thinking of push notifications, which are those pop-up boxes with some type of alert that come up on your phone or your mobile device. And it's usually something very short, and it's something letting you know something important. These are the exact same thing as that. They're push messages that come from the app. These are going to be best used for things that are immediate and timely. So if you have also experienced the Kiwanis convention app or the Key Club convention app, we use these push messages to say things like 30 minutes until the session starts, and it's just kind of a reminder letting them know, hey, this is coming up. You guys should start lining up now so you can get good seats. And so we have those, but then we also have promoted messages. And if you are familiar with how promoted posts on Facebook and Instagram are, or you're familiar with pinned posts on Twitter, that's what these essentially are. So promoted messages are not necessarily as immediate or super timely, but they're important information that you want to make sure that people get. What's different from push messages is that those cannot have images with them. They can link to something within the app. So let's say you, let's go back to the example of 30 minutes until opening session. Well, let's say you wanted to link to your opening session details within the app. You could do that with a push message or push notification. For promoted messages, it's more of, maybe you have a link to a survey or a poll, or you're including an image about a speaker and linking to their bio, or you're sharing some behind the scenes information, and you want those things to be pinned to the top of their feed. So no matter how many other posts attendees are doing, that will remain at the top of their feed for how long you determine. So you can say, I want this up from this time to this time. You can post it and say, I want this up for 2 hours. We have found that promoted messages tend to annoy people a lot less than push ones, to be completely candid. Push notifications, obviously, they pop up on their phones, and using them too often can annoy people. So much, in fact, that depending on which type of phone they use, your attendees may not necessarily receive those messages because they might have the ability to turn off all messages and not allow any apps that they're using to share those messages. But with promoted messages, they look more like content within the app. They look like if your district just posted something as if you were an actual person rather than the entity in charge of the entire app. And so these are really good opportunities to, just share fun content, share sneak peeks, get people excited. And like I said, you can pin those for a certain amount of time. You can also pin multiple, but we've found that having more than 2 gets to be a little frustrating, because then anytime someone's putting more stuff into the activity feed, the top 2, they have to scroll past all of those in order to get to the rest. And so if you guys have any more questions about those, just let me know. I know sometimes it's hard to see them if you don't have examples within an app to show. And since all of our events have finished, I don't have anything specifically to show you guys. But I do want to point out one of the fun things about these is that they don't always have to be super serious or informational. Obviously, we do want to have these at our disposal for those as well. But I want to show, for example, we had a survey, down here with the 50-50 split on whether New York style pizza crust or Chicago is better. That's just fun, but it's something that adds to people's experience when they're in this new city, and they're meeting new people. What are ways that you can help facilitate that experience? And that's kind of where some of this strategy goes in. So feel free to add some fun stuff to it, and really, capture that energy that they're seeing at their decon. All right. So while we're talking a little bit about content and messages, I talked a lot in my examples about behind the scenes types of peaks and things to get people hyped up. And the reason why I'm sharing that is because the app gives you a really cool opportunity where, as you start promoting the app leading up to your decon, as people start downloading it and they start posting in it, that gives you opportunities to, with these promoted messages, put in sneak peeks and direct them to different things that they should take a look at before they even arrive on site for your decon. So for example, in the past, if we've had a really cool session speaker and we have a cool fact about them, like they swim with sharks, we have pulled that out and said something along the lines of, meet so-and-so, your opening session speaker, whose biggest life achievement was swimming with sharks, or something, something just kind of fun and interesting. And then we included a picture and had a link to his profile in the app. And so it's, again, getting people really excited. They're getting previews. These are the things that we see for those of you who love social media and are familiar with things like Snaps and Instagram stories, and you think about how many of those are behind the scenes content. That's what everyone craves. So if there are little things that you can share as you're leading up to your decon, it gets more people coming back to the app as well. They're getting used to using it before they're even on site at your decon. So I'm going to move over to the event day tab just to show you something pretty quickly. So we have an opportunity, on the back end during your event to moderate and monitor. This is just that kind of administrative detail where hopefully no one's going to post anything that's inappropriate, but if you do notice that anyone is, spamming or harassing or not following your code of conduct within the app, you do have a couple of options. And one of them I'll show you under the Discover More tab up here when we get to that next. But there is an opportunity to flag posts that are deemed inappropriate in the app. And so anyone who's a user in the app can click on it. And so we had no flag post, yay, for last summer's convention. But it will have an actual flag on the top right-hand side of that person's post. And you can post it. It shows up anonymously, so no one has to feel like they're ratting someone else out. And it doesn't do anything except privately show it in the back here, so no one sees it publicly, and it allows you the chance to say, okay, yes, that isn't following our rules, and kind of determine what actions you want to take. And so I would highly recommend, if you have any questions about what should and shouldn't be allowed, what actions to take if you do see things where maybe someone's harassing someone else, I would really recommend you talk with Patrick. Thankfully, we haven't had a lot of instances like this, but there are some instances where it's easier to take it offline rather than leaving it within the app. So that is something that it's a very subtle moderation capability, but something that may be helpful for you. And then there's another key thing in Discover More. So I will go here next. Discover More is going to give you some additional features. This is typically where Double Dutch releases information about anything that's new. So I'll give a disclaimer that some of these new features have been released since our conventions last summer, and I personally have not had a chance to explore these and actually try them out. But that said, if there are things that you think you are interested in, you can feel free to add these if they work with your decon plans and your strategy, if they seem to be a good fit. Everything in here, they're called extensions. All it means is that it just adds it to your app, just as something like a new feature. Anything that says install now below is included for free within our overall contract with Double Dutch. You'll see that there's only one that says add custom, so you'll want to avoid that. Anything that says custom typically means money. But all of these other features are things that you can add, and it'll just add into your layout in your content as if it's an additional page, and you can just fill out your content that way. And so one of them is this code of conduct form. So you may have already had students sign something when they registered. I know different districts do it differently, but you can create a code of conduct that they have to accept before they even access the app. So as they create a login, they do have to read through this code of conduct, click, I do agree or I do not agree, and then only if they click agree can they access the app and use it. That's no guarantee that they're going to read it before they click accept, but you at least have that on record if anything happens. Another thing that's great about this, and you can see it on this screen right here, is this page also gives them the opportunity to report any violations. And this is new, where they can explain, you know, it's not necessarily something that's within the app, but if they want to report anything, they can report anonymously, or they can report as themselves since they are logged into the app. And then they can tell you kind of how they want to talk with you and figure out a solution for something. And then that goes straight to whomever you decide on the back end in the CMS, who that should be reported to. So that's something that you can set up. Again, these are things that you can either take or leave, but these are new, and we personally for CKI Key Club and Kiwanis haven't yet had a chance to use them, but that is available to you. A couple other ones that are new, the safety check. For those of you who are familiar with Facebook and how you can mark yourself as safe if you happen to be in a geographic location where, say, a natural disaster occurs, you may have seen some of your friends or family mark themselves and it comes up in your feed as this person was marked safe. This is something, again, that's new for this app. And what it does is it creates a list on the back end for you if you need to refer to it. Again, hopefully we never have to use anything like this, but I want to make sure that you are aware that this is an option for you as well. Then we also have, again, another thing that's new, Lost and Found. I feel like we had at least a couple of these in Chicago last year, where people can share things that they lost and say, hey, I'm missing such and such. If people have found something, they can include that in here. I'll pause this screen here so you can see at the top of that screen where it says official lost and found location, you can denote what your lost and found location is, and then include all of this information where they can, for example, you can see here where this says current location of these headphones is at Lost and Found. If someone says, oh, those are mine, they can message that person. You can click to resolve it. And it can help make finding things like lost wallets and shoes and badges hopefully a little bit easier. Again, something else that might be helpful. A few other things on here while I'm still on this page. If you want to have more fun surveys with lots of different options, not just a multiple choice or fill in the blank, if you want to use images, if you want drop downs or things like that, this gives you that capability. Let's see. Trivia challenges. I know this has been a really fun thing that some districts and bigger sessions have done. Where you have a timed trivia challenge, usually with a speaker on stage, and you have the question up on, say, a PowerPoint slide, and then it corresponds to a question that shows up on everybody's phones if they're in the app, and they can compete against each other and see how much they know on a particular subject. So these work really well for very big sessions, maybe with all of your attendees, not as much for smaller workshop sessions. But that is something that's new, and it's similar to a lot of other programs, but some other programs may have free versions, some have ones that charge extra, and this is already included in the app for you guys. And similarly, I'll end on this, the Q&A. This is a really cool feature. It's pretty sophisticated. Let's say you have a keynote speaker on stage and you have, you know, a large group listening in. What they can do is go into this Q&A session of the app, and they can type in a question that they have for this speaker. And it's 100% moderatable. So that means that it doesn't show up in the app until you click, you know, someone as an admin clicks and says this has been approved, just to make sure that everything's appropriate. And they can assign it with their name, or they can ask a question anonymously. And, you know, so many times we have audiences where they want to ask the same question, or there's a question that, you know, everybody really wants to know. And this gives them the opportunity to upvote. So in this example, you can see right here that first question has been upvoted 5 times. So that's saying a lot of people really want to know the answer to this. And it puts everything in a centralized location. So then if you want to then provide those questions to your speaker right after they finish their presentation on stage, you can go through them that way. And it also leaves it open for the keynote speaker afterwards. If there are any questions that were not answered, if they see something that they'd like to answer, they can then message that person and make sure that all questions have been answered. All right. So I won't go too much into event performance, which is the last tab that I want to talk about, but that's where you'll find all of your data. And like I said, that is incredibly important. That is something that, you know, it's a level of understanding what your audience wants that I think a lot of times we don't have until we do something like this with a program like this. So it'll tell you things, you know, your top rated sessions, your top most engaging and influential speakers. It's also where you'll find your survey and poll words today, survey and poll results. It's where you see the top hashtags that students are using. It's where you can see what are the most visited app sections. There's the capability of adding files to certain pages. For example, if you want them to download an electronic version of the code of conduct, or you have information about candidates, or if you have a PDF of a PowerPoint presentation for a workshop session. Those are all file downloads, and you can see how many of them were visited, how many of them were downloaded, and see the most popular ones. And that can give you an idea of what are some of the resources that you should maybe continue using. What were some of the most popular workshops, some of the feedback, because they can provide not only a 1 to 5 star rating on a workshop, but they can also share comments if they want to. That's always optional. You know, you can get more feedback and use that to help build decon and other educational sessions in the future. And at the bottom of that event performance tab, it does also have a special section that shares recommendations to increase your engagement. So it takes a look at the things that you've done and what people are most active with. And it may suggest, hey, if you add a poll, it could up your engagement, you know, 25% based on what your attendees are doing and what they are resonating with. So it gives you a lot of suggestions that can get you started. as you're building this, kind of figuring out what is it that I'm missing, what should I add. And of course, if you run into any technical issues, there is this tab up here for support where you can submit a support request. They have someone on staff 24/7 to answer any questions that you have. They are going to be your best line of contact if you run into any technical issues or questions during your decon event weekend. I will tell you that I don't normally check work email on the weekends, that, you know, work life, personal balance. So I will probably not see your email if you run into any issues until the following Monday. And so if you have any, you know, emergency questions or issues, talking to the support team, they are pretty quick in getting back. Usually they get back with me within maybe 15-30 minutes. And so that would be my recommendation, again, if you run into any issues like that. So I have talked a lot. So I'll go ahead and open for questions. As I know I went over a lot of information, but if you have any questions about specific examples from last year's CKIX app, or questions about how to incorporate some of this into your strategy, I'm open to giving you any advice I can share.
I have a question regarding the event day.
Okay.
And flags posts. If we find that one person is abusing it, can we block an individual from posting?
Yes. So there are actually a couple different things you can do with that. So you have the opportunities to message that person within the app. And in some cases, it's been better for us to take it offline, you know, talk to that person's chaperone if need be, or, you know, talk to them directly. But you can delete all of their posts all at once. There's a button where you can do that. You can delete that person's account, so then they no longer are in the app. And in some cases, we've had what were clearly spam accounts, or accounts that kids were making with fake IDs, and so we occasionally have had to do that. One other thing, we didn't talk about gamification. So if you are familiar with any of the leaderboard capabilities that the app has had in previous years, that again is open to you guys if you want to use it. Part of the gamification is it also reinforces people using the app well and appropriately, because there is, again, another button on the back end where in the span of a second, if someone is spamming just to get points, you can delete all of their points and they have to start back from zero. So there's a couple different ways to deal with that depending on what your strategy is. And so I would say definitely take a look at what your district's policy is on some of this. And again, Patrick, I'm just volunteering him, but Patrick will be a really good resource for that as well. But yes, you do have a lot of moderation capabilities with that, whether they are flagged or even if they're not flagged, you have that capability because you can go into the attendees. If you're in your layout and your content, you can click on attendees. It'll give you a full list of your attendees and the email addresses that they used for their profiles. And then it gives you options to either contact them, you can give them a warning, or you can block them or delete them from the app. Any other questions?
How do we get additional members from our district to be able to edit the app so we aren't doing it all ourselves as administrators?
Well, hopefully it shouldn't all land on your shoulders. That you just need to send to me. So I am the one who gets to grant that access. All I need is their email address and their name. I will say we try and limit that to about 3 people tops who are who have that behind the scenes access, because the more cooks in the kitchen, the more confusing it is. Maybe someone already uploaded it and they someone else comes in and uploads over their content and erases everything that they did. We find a lot of miscommunication if there are too many people who are listed as admins. Obviously they can still be kind of the ringleaders, the ones gathering content from everyone else, but maybe there's only 2 or 3 who are either moderating it during the event and leading up to the event, or actually putting in that content, adding images, that sort of thing. But yeah, all you have to do is email me their email address and their name and we can get them set up. Any other questions? All right. Well, it looks like no other questions. You have anything, Patrick, to add that I maybe forgot?
No, just one lesson we learned is to not encourage the gamification, not just encourage like with points for people just to post, because they will post just for giving. So, but you know, trial and error. So do what works best for y'all. Thank you, Sarah, for taking the time to kind of walk us through the higher level pieces and strategy. And again, for everyone here, we're here to support as we roll out this initiative. I think it's really awesome that we can do this for the districts at no cost, and I hope it helps improve the convention experience for all your members. But obviously, there are going to be some things that pop up from time to time, so just shoot those our way, and hopefully we can troubleshoot those for you easily. Or again, for that direct feedback or direct help and support, going to Double Dutch's representatives as well.
And I will say too, not to interrupt you, Patrick, but as we get closer to the start of decon season, because I think it looks like PNW is the first, starting in early February, I typically send out an email 1 to 2 weeks before your decon starts just to check in, make sure that everything's going okay. If you have any last minute questions, because I know once we hit that week before decon, it gets a little crazy. And then I'll also be in touch with you afterwards just to kind of see how everything went, and if you have any feedback for us, because these are helpful things for us as well as we are gearing up for CKIX 2019. So I'll definitely be in touch with all of you at some point here in the near future. So you can just expect an email from me.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again, Sarah. Thank you all for attending, and good luck using the app and with the econs, and look forward to hearing back from you if y'all have any needs. So we'll be in touch soon.